thank you for joining us for this short segment on simple, healthy, and affordable cooking. And today I'm going to be making a basic vegetable soup. This is going to include potatoes, onion, mushrooms, carrots, and celery in a vegetable broth with some chopped tomatoes from a can included in there. And I want to mention all of these items because these are very basic, simple vegetarian items that most people would anticipate in a vegetable soup. So this is a very affordable meal. It can be set up to serve as many as 4 people, and the cost is very low. Depending on where you shop, all of these items can come together for less than $10. And that's part of the reason why I've been doing this series of workshops on healthy, affordable cooking, to let everyone know that there is an alternative to ordering out, to going and getting fast food, or to spending hours in the kitchen. So why don't we start off? I'm going to say that the first thing that I like to do is make sure that I get the hard vegetables chopped, because what I'd like to do is put those vegetables, the carrots, the celery, and the potatoes, into the soup pot with a little bit of olive oil, just to saute them so that they'll cook much faster when you put the broth in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up some celery. And I want to start off by mentioning that I've always heard that the most dangerous thing in a kitchen is a dull knife. So make sure that you're using a sharp kitchen knife, and also make sure you're holding it properly. So I was just at a workshop and I was talking to one of the students there, and I asked her if she knew how to hold a kitchen knife. And many people, if not most, will hold a knife like this and do the chopping. But actually, the safest way to hold a knife is to really start with your thumb and your forefinger, pinch the blade like this, wrap the rest of your fingers around, and then hold the knife like this with much more control. I've also seen some people put their finger on top of the blade, but that makes it a little tippy and a little dangerous. So why don't we hold the knife properly and start with the items that are going to take the longest to cook in the broth, and that's going to be the celery and the carrots and the potatoes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start carefully cutting the celery, and I've got 2 stalks of celery here. One of the students also asked me why I was cutting the vegetables at an angle. And part of the answer is it's a little bit more interesting than just cutting them at a right angle. But another part of the answer is that if you cut the vegetables long ways like this, there's more surface area and they'll cook faster. And if you're hungry or impatient, or you just want it to look a little bit more interesting in the bowl, then it's good to cut it at an angle like that. So I'm going to put the celery in. Now, the next ingredient that I selected would be carrots. And I intentionally purchased carrots that are still with the stalks on them. And the reason is because that will be part of the soup. It adds interest and it adds color and flavor to the soup. So I purchased the carrots. Now I've already peeled these, so that's not part of it. I peeled them. But I'm going to cut these carrots as well. And again, I'm cutting them at a slight angle. And because the carrots do take a long time to cook, I'm going to make sure that they're at that angle so that there's more surface area. So I'm going to put those in this bowl here. I'm going to take that stalk off, and then I'm going to start cutting. You know, the other thing I'm going to point out, which a lot of the students at my last workshop didn't know, is whenever you're chopping vegetables, make sure you curl this hand under and the knife blade will rub against your knuckles. That way you're not going to run the risk of cutting your fingertips. So you always form sort of a claw with your non-cutting hand, and you cut the vegetables that way and not your fingers. You know, I'm using sort of a fast method to cutting these because I know that we're in a hurry and I wanted to keep this video pretty short. But you can take more care in cutting the vegetables, but they're still going to taste the same way once they get into the soup. Let's see, I've got the mushrooms, and just because of availability, I picked whole mushrooms. You can pick sliced mushrooms, and I think they're actually the same cost. But I did pick these, and I'm going to cut the mushrooms up as well. Now, the mushrooms are very soft, so they're easier to cut. So be careful when you're moving from a harder vegetable like a carrot or a celery into a mushroom. Make sure that you realize that the blade's going to go through much more quickly, so that you don't catch yourself off guard and cut yourself. Something else that I learned when I was teaching that workshop was that most people are aware that mushrooms are now becoming a popular and an important part of everyone's diet. You find mushrooms even in coffee these days. So mushrooms are a great thing to include in a vegetable soup for nutritional reasons, but also because it adds more interest to the meal, and I think more people will enjoy it. So these are just plain white mushrooms. They're organic, and they came whole like this. And so the chopping is necessary, but it's not difficult at all, as you can see. So these items will get sauteed in the pot. I mentioned that there's going to be potatoes in this soup. Now what I'm using is these petite gold potatoes, and they're for a couple of reasons. One, they're very flavorful. The other is because they're so easy to work with. They're smaller, and you can cook them with the skin on. And the other thing is that you really only need to cut them once. So you're not peeling and cutting potatoes. We're just going to cut them in half, or actually long ways, and put them into the soup. The other thing that's nice about potatoes is once you start cooking and simmering the broth, some of the potatoes start to break down, the smaller ones will, and it makes the soup a little heartier, a little thicker, and so it feels like, and it is, more filling than just a simple bowl of soup. So when you're preparing this, you can make it into a side dish, or if you want to make it a little heartier, you can put more things into it. I just put 5 ingredients into the recipe to simplify matters. But if you decide you want more in the recipe, you can add things like red beans or pinto beans. You can even, which a lot of times is my preference, grill a steak and slice it up and put it inside the soup. No matter what, you can always add something to make it a little heartier, and it's tough to go wrong. So I think I've done a pretty good job with the potatoes. Now, I've got this onion here, and it's a regular white onion. And there are a lot of ways to cut an onion. There's a lot of ways of hurting yourself if you don't cut it properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a safe cut. I'm going to cut the onion in half like this. I'll put the rest away. Then I'm going to take the onion and cut it into a quarter. Put the other part away. And I'm going to peel the outer skin off so you don't get any of the fibrous or difficult, tough part of the onion. So now I'm going to hold it like this. Got the outer skin as sort of a handle, and I'm going to make the cut. I'm going to make several orbital cuts like this around the onion. So now, once I cut it like this, it's going to be sort of pre-diced. Now, one thing you're going to notice is I'm going to leave the onion out of the soup until later because the onion cooks pretty quickly. So I'm going to leave this out here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preheat the soup pot, put a little bit of olive oil in it, and then I'm going to start sauteing these things. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. So right now I've got a medium-sized pot on the stove, a stainless steel pot, and I'm going to set this burner at medium. And I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil. And you know, one thing I want to mention about olive oil, I like cooking with olive oil, but I always want to remember that olive oil has a much lower smoke point than, say, canola oil. And what that means is if you're cooking something very hot or if you're frying something, it'll start smoking sooner. So you want to be careful. And I'm going to grab our ingredients here that we've sort of prepared. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the potatoes in. And they haven't started sizzling yet, but the potatoes seem to take the longest when you're making this recipe. So I'm putting the potatoes in first, like so. And I'm going to allow them to cook down a little bit, and then I'll add the other ingredients. And I'm going to start off by seasoning the potatoes with just a pinch of salt right now. And you can hear that the potatoes they're starting to cook. And so they're already small, so they're going to cook pretty quickly. But I'm putting those in there first. And then I'm going to grab a spoon here, a wooden spoon. And I'm going to stir them around a little bit. You know, another thing that we discussed in the workshop was the safety of different kitchen utensils. And recently some articles have come out talking about the dangers of using even heat resistant plastic utensils. I know in our house we got rid of all of our plastic cooking utensils. I'm using bamboo, and it's considered safe. For now, you never know what's going to turn up, but for right now, the bamboo utensils seem to be the way to go. Now, I also suffer from a lack of attention sometimes, and I've burned many of them. But for now, it seems to be working out okay. Let me turn this around this way. And these potatoes are starting to soften just a little bit. So now I'm going to add the rest of the mix. I'm going to add the mushrooms, the carrots, and the celery. So, you can hear everything is starting to cook, and cook pretty well. So what I'm going to do now is add a little bit more salt, because there's so much more in the pot. Okay. And then just a little bit of black pepper. So now there's going to be more flavor cooking in. So you can see everything is cooking down, and the flavors are starting to blend. And now what I'm going to do is set this aside on a separate burner on low. I'm setting this aside. I'm going to turn this burner off for just a second. I'm going to get a larger pot. Because very soon we're going to be adding many more ingredients. So this is a large stock pot. As that's cooking, I'm going to add just a bit of canola oil now. I'm going to turn this on to medium. So this is going to start heating up. Just check on this mixture. So this is going well. Now in this stock pot with the bit of canola oil, I am going to add the onions. So there we go. Got the onions in here, and they're gonna start to cook. And as those are cooking, I'm now gonna add the vegetable mix that we started with. So, we've got this vegetable mix, and it's all starting to meld together and soften. And as we do that, I'm going to add the broth. So this is 32 ounces of vegetable broth. It's very easy to find in grocery stores, and it's really only about $2.50 for this much broth. So when I add this in, it's going to cool down the vegetables that are cooking, but it's also going to give us an opportunity to simmer them in a liquid, which will finish the cooking process. So there we go. We've got the vegetable broth in there with the vegetables that we've sauteed. And it looks great. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 14.5 ounce can of diced tomatoes, and also the juice that they're packed in. So what that means is I'm going to add another flavor into this vegetable soup. This is going to be adding more nutrition in. So that's the can, and I'm going to show you. It's just a very small amount, 14.5 ounces, but as I mix it in, it's going to bring new flavor to the soup. So we're on medium-high right now because I want to bring this up to a simmer. And what I'm going to do is put a lid on this. So this will simmer pretty quickly, and it's going to soften all the vegetables. So after just about 30 minutes, our soup is done. Actually, it's still simmering behind me, but you can have it now. It's ready to serve. And I have to say, once I added the carrot tops, it really added a lot to the color and the flavor and the vibrancy of the dish. So I'm gonna try and show what it looks like, or maybe I'll show to this camera over here what a terrific dish this ended up being after just about 30 minutes. It's healthy, it's nutritious, it's affordable, and it's also a lot of fun to make. So I hope you'll give it a try in your kitchen, and I hope you will also email me with any questions you have about how to make this, but I don't think there'll be any questions. I think that you'll try this dish, you'll enjoy it, and you'll share it with friends and family. So I want to thank you all very much for joining me. Mahalo.